got a small group today, and that is okay. This was kind of this is kind of an odd Rico 12 today. So here we go. Welcome to Rico 12. I'm Justin B., your host. I'm also your speaker today, a child of an all-powerful and perfectly loving God and an addict living in the miracle of recovery one day at a time. Rico 12 is an open to all addictions and afflictions organization dedicated to exploring the common threads of the differing manifestations of alcoholism, sharing tools and offering hope from those walking a similar path. We gather from diverse backgrounds, faiths, and locations to learn and support one another. Our speakers come from various fellowships and experiences, demonstrating the universal principles of recovery. Rico 12 is not allied or affiliated with any specific 12-step fellowship. This is Rico 12 speaker meeting number 351. Thank you for joining us live on the recording or on the recording later. Today's speaker will be me, and I'll be speaking today on the topic entitled On the Same Team. But before I get into that, here's just a few quick announcements. Rico 12 offers a variety of recovery resources, including podcasts and social media communities. To explore more, visit rico12.com or check the chat or the show notes for links. The chat's going to be pretty quiet, at least from my end today, because I'm going to be speaking, so I won't be able to post anything in there. So, but everything will be in the show notes. All right. Rico 12 is self-supporting, and your contributions help us continue this mission. Thank you to all our Spearhead donors, past and present. This week we had several people chime in with donations, and I'm so grateful for that. I did not take time to notate who those were, but you know who you are out there, and I'll get you recognized in the future. Your support truly does make a difference. This last week, all of our Zoom and our podcast platform and everything renewed, and grateful for the support we've received. We were able to cover those costs, but here we go again for the next year. So hopefully we have that coming in. Thank you so much. If you would like to contribute, please visit rico12.com/support, or check the links that'll be in the show notes of the podcast that'll come out later today. Every bit of support, financial or through word of mouth, helps us share these messages of recovery. Each week we get to hear from different speakers. And as I mentioned earlier, this is meeting 351. And I think out of all of those, this is only, the third time that I've had to come in and kind of ad-lib and fill in. So what a miracle that is, I think, when we consider all things here, that, we almost always have a guest speaker that comes through, and I'm really grateful for that. Today, I'm going to just kind of tell you, I'll introduce myself. I'll get that going. So for now, take it away, me. The floor is mine. I'm super awkward about this, but I am grateful to be able to speak today. So my name's Justin. I am a son of an all-powerful and perfectly loving God. I am an addict living in the miracle of one day at a time recovery. And I'm so grateful for that. My story that I'll be sharing here a little bit is one that, it's painful, it's hard, but man, has it really brought me to where I am today in, whatever that looks like. I'm just happy and glad and grateful to be able to be in this place where I am, doing things that I never imagined I would. My story begins, at 6 years old, when I was first introduced to pornography. I'm a sex addict, is my primary addiction. I've got other things that gnaw at me and keep at me, but that's my primary addiction. That's the primary manifestation of alcoholism in my life. And anyways, through my youth, through my adulthood, I hid away the sexual the ways that I misbehaviors from everybody. I was looked at as a good church-going kid, as a good church-going guy that knew what I was doing, that was always often counted on to lead in certain areas, and yet I hid this really, to me, dark, painful secret. I hid it from my wife. I hid it from my kids. I hid it from everybody for years. And when I was about 30, I'd been married about 8 or so years. I finally hit a point where I was like, I just can't keep this a secret anymore. And I pulled my wife aside and I shared with her what I was dealing with and the different, I trickle disclose things to her. I shared some of the things that I thought she would need to know without vomiting everything on her. But she was crushed. She was shocked. She had no idea. And, and, and it was a really, really hard period of time. Now, in this process, I thank God that she was willing to go seek help in places that I wasn't going to go. I kept thinking that if I just tried harder, buckled down, went to more motivational seminars and learned how to have higher and better willpower, if the mind can believe it, the body can achieve it, all of those little phrases that seem to work so well for other people. But for me, it didn't work. I'd clench my fists harder. I'd grit my teeth harder. I'd close my eyes harder. I'd pray harder. I'd, exercise harder. I'd do all of these things harder, but it wouldn't work for me. I couldn't stop acting out no matter how much I tried. And my wife, as I mentioned, she was willing to go seek counsel from others, whether it be from religious leaders, whether it be in different rooms that talked specifically about addiction and the recovery therefrom. I was not willing to put my head in any place like that because, well, what if someone saw me that knew me? What would they think then? And that was just something that I was not willing to do. And like I said, when I was about 30, she entered the Anon rooms right within a week or two after I disclosed to her what was going on in my life. And she jumped in. Initially, she thought she was going to fix me. She wanted to put me in her pocket and protect me from anything and anyone that might be out there trying to get me. But very quickly she learned, and I wish that everybody had this experience, including myself. Very quickly she learned that when she got in those rooms, it wasn't about fixing me. It was about fixing her and her relationship with her higher power and taking care of her own side of the street. For the first couple of months, or maybe the first year or so, she would come to me after her meetings and she'd share some of the things she learned. And she'd say, Justin, you need to go to these meetings. And I'd respond with, no, I do not. I do not. And I will not, because I am not like these freaks that go to these meetings. That's one of the first reasons. The other reason was I am never going to admit powerlessness over anything. I've shared this before in different places, but I have short man syndrome. I'm a short guy. And I will not back down from anybody who I've got to prove myself. And I cannot admit powerlessness in any way, shape, or form. Or I succumb to, I'm just a little guy. I'm a short guy. I just can't do, those other things. That's the voice in my head that talks to me. But anyways, after a couple of years, she stopped saying stuff like, hey, you need to get to these meetings. You need to jump into 12-step. But she would still practice the principles in all her affairs. And over time, I saw her changing. I saw a light in her eyes. I saw and experienced the love and the connection she had with others and the love and connection she had with her higher power. And I was feeling left behind. I was feeling like, hey, something's happening here that is not good. Now, she could have and, possibly should have divorced me many times during those 8 years, during any of that time together. But for whatever reason, each time she asked God and said, hey, is it time for me to leave? God said, hey, stick it out just a little bit longer. Stick it out. Something's going to happen. Well, that something took 8 years. And I don't know about you guys, but if it was me on her end of that bargain, I'd be like, man, it's been 8 years. I've stuck it out. This is long enough. I'm wasting away my life. My kids are all growing up with a father who's really absent emotionally, who's really impatient, who's really just not connected with each other, with the family or with God. But for whatever reason, she felt that she needed to stick around. And one day I came to her having reached another rock bottom after, who knows how many hundreds and hundreds of times over that 8 years, where I'd say, man, I screwed up again. I'm doing this again. I'm an idiot again, but I'm going to do better this time. And I finally just came to her and I said, you know what? Well, before that, the rock bottom was her coming to me and saying, hey, Justin, you know what? if at the end of this life I'm hanging out with God and you're not there with me, I'll be sad, but I'll be okay because he takes way better care of me than you do. And there's another shot to my pride, and just really tough for me to take those things. But anyways, I finally came to her a few weeks after that saying, I can't do this. Where are these meetings that you used to talk to me about and that you attend every week? And she kind of chuckled and said, whatever, here they are, do with it what you will. And that first meeting in September of 2013, which is, 12 years ago, almost 12 years ago, what a fun ride this has been, was a game changer. And I don't want to go too far into any more of that story other than to say that in the last 12 years, my life has changed. Our marriage has changed. Our family has changed. Everything around us has changed. And what I'm learning is that it's not just because I or she individually chose to work our program, chose to do things that we weren't previously willing to do. It's because we chose together to do that. Now, she was 8 years ahead of me, and we are on different paths. I don't know if you've probably seen this relationship triangle. At the top, there's God, and at the bottom two corners, there's me and you, me and my wife, me and Heather. And for 8 years, she was getting closer to God. She was getting closer to God, and I was not. I was probably regressing. And so that triangle looked really funky, and it was probably really close to breaking. But over the last, several years, we're both getting closer to God. The triangle is getting tighter and tighter, and our relationship with God is getting closer and closer. And why is that? That's kind of what I want to talk about. The topic is that I've got here is entitled "On the Same Team," and that talks about me and my wife Heather, and it also talks about God. We're all on the same team, and I want to go through a few points that share how I see that we're on the same team. And I want to put a disclaimer out there. I am not an expert in this area. I'm not a perfect example of it. I'm a mess. Our communication between my wife and I we're still working on it. We're still trying to get on the same page in a lot of areas. But because we now speak the same language, it's much better than it ever has been. And once again, the preacher here is preaching to the preacher. I'm the first one that's talking here. And it's got to come to me first. And I have to hopefully practice these principles that I'm sharing with you here. But like I said, some of the first things that I want to talk about is because now we speak the same language. We speak 12-step language. We speak big book language. We speak our S fellowship language. We can speak that with each other and be comfortable with each other speaking that language. And it is such a powerful thing. It creates emotional safety and mutual understanding. I don't know if you've ever really went out and talked to somebody of a completely different faith, about God. Some of the words are the same, but man, the nuances can be really different, and some words just don't make sense with that. But if we are on the same team, we're doing the same work, all of a sudden the language comes together. And the communication comes together much quicker. And it helps out in times of conflict or confusion. One of my wife's favorite things is to say is text is the lowest form of communication. And what I mean by that in this situation is if I'm thumbing out a text I'm feeling resentment or fear or selfishness or dishonesty, and I'm thumbing it out to her saying, hey, this is what I'm experiencing. Rather than giving her a call or meeting with her face to face, it comes across in a way that is really easy to be misunderstood. And I'm sure we've all experienced, we've either received a text or we've sent a text that was perceived in a way that was absolutely not the way it was intended when we thought it up, and caused all sorts of additional resentment and broken trust and all sorts of messes in our lives. Text is the lowest form of communication. So my advice in this is if I have to communicate something that has any emotion whatsoever, any potential of being misunderstood, she and I try to avoid doing it in text. Email works okay because we're able to do it in long form, but the best of all is face to face. And if I'm out of town or she's out of town, we make sure that every night we have a FaceTime call and we have the conversation at the end of the day. We pray together, and then we go to bed. And that's a really cool way for us to communicate and not just do it via text. Another thing that has been really helpful for us in this journey is the mutual respect for each other's journey. As I mentioned earlier, when she first went into the rooms for the first year or so, she'd be trying to force principles down my throat saying, hey, today we talked about step 4 and here's what that is. We talked about step 8 and here's what that is. And she'd be trying to force it. And you need to do these things. You need to do those things. And as her perception of things changed, that respect for my journey changed. She realized that she couldn't save me. She couldn't clean up my side of the road. I had to do it, that she just had to work on her side of the road. And then as I came into recovery and started practicing these principles and stuff, and if I saw, that maybe she was taking somebody else's inventory, I needed to back off and not say, hey, are you taking somebody else's inventory? Because that's not my side of the street. We speak the same language, but I can't point it out to her when I sense that she's not doing that well, at least in that manner. I love how she will sometimes approach me and she'll say, hey, you know what? Can I ask you a few questions? And she'll ask me stuff that leads me to the conclusion that I'm taking somebody else's inventory rather than pointing the finger and saying, you're taking somebody else's inventory. And that is a helpful way to communicate also. Another thing that is so powerful about respecting each other's journeys is I am not her sponsor and she is not my sponsor. And we don't sponsor each other. That would be brutal. And that would, I guarantee we'd end up in divorce if we were each other's sponsors. Because I have to say something hard to my sponsees. My sponsor has to say hard things to me that in a marriage would cause all sorts of trust to break down and other communication to break down. That would be really rough. One of my favorite things is about a little over a year ago, I encountered something in my own recovery where I was like, oh, there was a blind spot that was suddenly revealed to me that affected her and my relationship. It affected some things between us. And when I took it to her and said, what do you think? Her immediate response was, it hurt. But at the same time, it was the most healthy thing she ever could have said. She said, Justin, I'm not your higher power. I am not your sponsor. Go talk to them. And while it was a kick to the gut, it was a realization that she's in a healthy place. And she does not need to carry that weight that my higher power can carry and my sponsor needs to carry and give me feedback on these things. And that's been super powerful for me. And I've kind of thought about using that. I haven't yet used that same line on her in certain places, but I have said, hey, I'm not your sponsor. Hey, let's talk to God about this. I'm not as bold as she is in doing those things, which is probably a good thing. Another couple of bullet points in this area of being on the same team in recovery is we have spiritual unity, not spiritual uniformity. Yes, we believe that as we're getting closer to each other and closer to God, we believe that God is one. We believe that God is the same that we had to, but our perceptions of that God are different, and that's okay. Our understanding of that God are different, and that's okay. So unity does not mean identical growth. It doesn't mean identical vision of where that end result will be. It means that we get to walk that path ourselves with each other as we get closer to God. And we get to see, if we're walking down the path at the same time, side by side, shoulder to shoulder, commencing on this path of recovery, she may be looking off to the left and see something completely than I see as I look off to the right, but we're on the same path, moving in the same direction. And we don't have to be absolutely uniform in everything we do. I think that's a really healthy way to look at it. God is our ultimate guide. As long as we're heading towards that peak of that triangle towards God and trying to get to the same point, we may meander a little bit and be a little bit faster or slower in some areas. But as we're going with each other, we're teammates. We're not each other's higher power. Another thought that I had that I put down here as a bullet point is we get to serve each other as a team. Recently, one of my sponsees is having a really, really rough go of things in his relationship. His relationship is ending, and it's very sad. and it's been a lot to carry it, not to carry. It's been a lot to hold space for as I work with him through this really, really hard time. And one thing that I've done is with the sponsee, when he's brought something to me that's really hard, I've said, "Hey, can I take this to my wife and ask her perspective of it as a spouse of an addict? Can I ask her perspective of it and get her take?" And he gratefully he said, "Yeah, absolutely. I want to get her perspective of it." So we serve each other as a team. While my wife doesn't talk to my sponsee, while my wife doesn't sponsor my sponsee in any way, shape, or form, is we're on the same team and we're working together towards a common goal, commencing shoulder to shoulder once again on this common path. We get to help each other. Sometimes she'll come to me and she'll say, "You know what? One of my sponsees here is dealing with this and her husband is doing that. Can you put yourself in his mind as well as you can, in his shoes? What is he thinking? How is he justifying this, or what does she need to understand where he's coming from?" And this is a really cool way to work together, serving each other and serving others as a team. There have been days, and there still will be days where virtually a full Saturday, which is typically our only day of the week that we can be together, for most of the day, is taken up with either me working with someone in crisis that I sponsor, or her working with someone in crisis that she sponsors. And that sucks. It's hard. But we, being that we speak the same language and we're doing the same job, we're working for the same God, trying to for the same end goal of helping others connect with God and move forward, we get it. And we typically don't let that become a place of resentment against each other. Another couple of bullet points, and this is something that I've talked to a little bit. We walk beside each other. I'm not leading her. She's not leading me. I'm not being dragged behind her, and she's not being dragged behind me. That's kind of how she may have felt initially, like when disclosure first happened. She said, "I want to put you in my pocket and drag you everywhere I go." And that may be sometimes how I have felt is, you know what? I'm feeling like I'm the one that's a little bit closer to God right now in this walk. You need to come along with me. But that's not how it is. That's not how it will be successful. We have to walk side by side, commencing shoulder to shoulder, this common journey, equal in dignity, equal in strength, equal in need for grace. And I think that's really important, that need for grace. I'm not perfect. She's not perfect. The people we work with aren't perfect. Our sponsors aren't perfect. And we need to provide grace for each other and grace for those around us who we perceive might be hurting us or something like that. And we've got to have grace for the other person. If my wife comes to me and says, "Today was a rough day. I felt mistreated by this person or that person." Yes, I need to put my arm around my wife and say, "I'm sorry that you experienced that," but I cannot perpetuate the resentment that may be felt there. I have to say, now let's talk about how we can connect with God and how we can release this and move forward in this. And if I sit and I point the finger at that other person, yeah, he or she was a big jerk and they deserve, to burn, whatever it is, that's not helpful. And that's not helpful to her healing either. And then once again, back to this triangle. God at the top, my wife and I, my partner and I at each bottom corner. It's so vital that we keep God at our center. Once again, my wife cannot be my higher power, and I cannot be hers. My kids cannot be our higher power. Our grandkids can't be our higher power. We've got to keep God at the center, or we will lose all of that. If I don't keep God at my center, if I put my wife at my center, the first time that she's unhappy, it's going to throw my whole life out of whack. And I could very easily spiral and say, "You know what? Forget this. I'm going to go back to my addictive behaviors and practices, because at least I never felt rejected. At least I never felt less than in that area. And now I'm feeling rejected. I'm feeling like you're upset, and no matter what I do, I can't fix you." And if she becomes my center, I could spiral out and lose everything. I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that. And as I come to wrapping this up, I just want to share one more thing about our relationship with God. We trust that when we align ourselves with God, and then as we align with each other as closely as we can with God at our center, that we will be provided with sufficient for our needs, sufficient energy, sufficient resources, sufficient time, sufficient love, sufficient, whatever it is, God will provide what we need. And how do I know that? Well, I'm here today. I haven't died yet. My wife's here today. She hasn't died yet. We haven't starved. We haven't, we're not dying on the streets. In fact, we're pretty blessed, and it's been an amazing life as we walk this path of recovery together, striving to learn the same language and connect with each other and connect with our higher power. And as I mentioned, that we are always provided with sufficient for our needs so that we can reflect the light that we believe is shown on us to others, that they may hopefully walk that same path and come together with those that they love and find true recovery, true healing, and true progress in their lives. And with that, I think I'll close my share. Thank you all for listening and hearing that out. I did not take notes to ask questions of myself. If you have questions, please type them in the chat, and we'll go and I'll come to those questions, answer anybody's questions that you may have on this topic that I've been discussing, and I would love to answer any questions that you may have. And if there aren't any questions, it'll be a short meeting, but I would love to get some questions from you and answer those. And I'm grateful for those who have been here. So I'm going to pause for just a minute, have some dead air while anybody who has a question, they have time to type it out, and then we'll move forward with that. Got questions about addiction, recovery, or just life in general? Let's noodle it out together. Grab your big book, a pen, a highlighter, and a notepad, and join Nikki M. and me, Justin B., on Rico 12 Noodle It Out with Nikki M. Each episode, we take real-life questions, ours, yours, and those from the recovery community, and dig deep into the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous to find real, practical solutions. So, if you're ready to do the work and apply the solution, tune in to Noodle It Out with Nikki M., streaming now on your favorite podcast platform. All right. Oh, great question. Got a question that comes in from Matt. Thank you, Matt, for this question. What would you say to singles about getting into relationships? I'm gonna refer to this very similar triangle that I talked about. Me, my spouse, and God. And then I'm gonna name it me, you, and God. And in this triangle, there are several levels of the triangle. The bottom level I call acquaintances. And in order to get into a relationship as a single, I need to meet somebody. Well, what does that mean? Well, in today's day and age, it means, Tinder or some other dating app, which I would not recommend. I would recommend getting out to a local place where people with similar values as what you want to have gather. It could be a church group. It could be a community gathering. It could be at a sporting event. It could be, wherever. But look for people with values that you want to have in recovery, and get to know people. Get to know people's names. Get out of your shell and go shake somebody's hand. Introduce yourself. Say, hey, I'm Justin. What's your name? Hey, I'm here at the sporting. I like baseball. Tell me about your experience with baseball, whatever. So acquaintanceship is the bottom level. Then friends, get to know them a little bit more. Hey, what do you like to do? Maybe we can go on a friend date, which is the next level. Hey, let's just go on a hike together for an hour, and that's it. Let's not have any expectations of food, of sex, of anything. We're just going on a friend date, and we do this for a while until we get to know each other more, and then it can go into a relationship dating situation where we get to know each other more. Hey, this is looking more like a long-term relationship. Let's jump into talking about kids, talking about religion, talking about things that are important in a relationship that so often we skip past. And I recommend doing all those things before bringing sex into the relationship. I've got to know all of those things before I jump in, or sex is just empty. It's um, anyways, that's kind of my thoughts on that. I hope that was helpful. And then once the relationship, go into engagement and then marriage, and that same triangle, that pyramid comes up, and it gets closer and closer to God with each level. All right, I hope that was helpful. Question from Nick. Is there any hope for a relationship like mine? My partner has zero interest in the 12 steps and no belief in a higher power. She does, however, see the benefit of me being in recovery. Absolutely, there's hope for that. You just have to recognize that your path is your path, and your relationship is your relationship with God is your relationship with God, your higher power. My wife could have very easily answered this question. It could have been the one that asked this question about 13 years ago. I've been on this path for 8 years, and my spouse has zero interest in 12 step. His connection with his higher power is perfunctory at best, is superficial at best, and all of these things are happening. Don't give up. It could be 8 years down the road. Suddenly she may say, man, I love what you're doing. I want what you have. Let's do this. And that could happen. It happened in my relationship. All right. Looks like I've got a anonymous question. Yes, an anonymous question. First, oh, and that was awesome. All right. Thank you very much. Question. Those 8 years she did her own program while you were still in addiction, was it hard for her to forgive that time? Initially, yes. It wasn't. So this is a better question for her, and she's not here to ask this, but I've heard her speak on this a little bit before. I've heard her share on this when we've met with couples and stuff like that, and shared our story and listened to their story. For the first few years of her own recovery and program, while I was not, there was a lot of resentment. There was a lot of bitterness. There was a lot of victim thinking. I'm doing all this work, and he's says he's doing work, but all he's doing is spinning his wheels and not getting anywhere. But once she worked her step 4 or 5 with her sponsor, and she got into the maintenance stuff of maintenance and growth of 10, 11, 12, I can look back at it and see a big difference in where she was at peace while still wanting me to change, while still hoping I would change, but she was at peace with me. But it took a few years. It's not something that's going to happen overnight. If I come into the rooms and 6 months down the road, I'm on this pink cloud and I'm just rocking recovery, I'm sponsoring people, I'm everything great in my world, that doesn't mean it's great in my spouse's world. But I need to keep on that path. I can't just give up and say, well, screw it. If she's not doing it, if he's not doing it, then I'm going to quit doing it. No, because it works. It works. And as time goes on, miracles can happen. And I recognize that, well, I want to say that my wife and I, our story is kind of a unicorn, but I don't think it is. I think more and more people would experience very similar things if the addict or the anon, whatever it may be, continued on that path, no matter what the other partner is doing or not doing for 8 years in our case. The other one is going to eventually either go, screw this, I'm out. I don't want this light in my life. I want the darkness, and they'll break it off. Or they'll say, man, I want that light. I'm attracted to that light. I'm going to go to that light. I'm going to do whatever he's doing in order to get that. So I think that if people stuck to doing what worked, more and more stories like mine would be out there. All right, let's see. I hope that was helpful. Right now, I don't have any other questions. I'm not going to close this up yet. If there's anybody that has an additional question, please feel free to put that in there. Oh, looks like we got another one coming in. Oh, here we go. We got another question. This one is a question from Dan. Have you ever applied the traditions in your relationship? If so, which one had the most impact? I'm going to pull my traditions here real quick. My wife and I have talked about the traditions in her fellowship. They don't really talk a whole lot about the traditions, but I've brought them to her in some of the things that I do. Uh, yeah, as I'm scanning through this, definitely we've definitely done this. Um, the first one that jumped out me, excuse me, the first one that jumped out at me was tradition 2. In the short version, it's actually the long version 2 of tradition 2 for our group purpose. And our group is my wife and I and our family. There is but one ultimate authority, a loving God as he may express himself in our group conscience. Our leaders are but trusted servants. They do not govern. Hey, Spearheads, if you're looking to dive deeper into the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous with people who live the solution, then you won't want to miss Rico 12 Big Book Roundtable. Join David G., Nikki M., and me, the moderator Justin B., 3 recovered addicts from multiple fellowships, as we break down the big book line by line. In each 30-minute episode, we share our experience, strength, and hope in a real, raw, and practical roundtable discussion. So, if you are ready to learn and apply what you learn, tune in to Rico 12 Big Book Roundtable on your favorite podcast platform. Yeah, definitely. That second tradition is one that we try to apply into our relationship every single day. We try to let God lead and us just follow. Say, your will, not ours, be done. Let us do your will. And does that always work? No, because self gets in the way a lot. The selfishness and self-centeredness gets in the way a lot for both of us, myself especially. Excuse me. Another tradition that I think is really helpful for us is tradition 10. We should have no opinion on outside issues. Should never be drawn into public controversy. And what that looks like is, yeah, we talk religion. Yeah, we talk politics. But if we have differing opinions, we step back and let grace fill in and not say, hey, that's something that's a deal breaker, because we've been married now almost not quite 30 years, and the deal hasn't been broken yet by big stuff. Why let something when we are 90% aligned in our beliefs, in the targets we're going at, in our thoughts? Why let 10% ruin everything else? We don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. So that's really important for us. All right. Oh, another question came in. Anonymous question. How about your other programs? How did you incorporate them? Yeah. So let me think about that for a minute. Really, what I've learned in my recovery is that, yes, I definitely qualify for multiple fellowships. I find that if I stick to the core of the principles as laid out, my personal favorite is the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous. If I stick to those core principles, I find healing, recovery, peace, serenity in all of the different places of my addiction as I apply those principles in all aspects of my life and all my affairs. But I have been a member of several different fellowships, and I attend, at least 3 different fellowships on a weekly basis. But for me, it's not about what type of fellowship it is. It's about what message they carry. It's about what the people in the fellowship are doing in order to have that light in their eyes, to reflect that light, to have what I want. And I hope that I'm also bringing in what other people want into those fellowships. So I don't know if that answered your question, but yeah, I do, like I said, I do attend several fellowships, but in them, I could attend any 12-step fellowship, I think, and feel comfortable in them as long as I'm practicing those principles in all of my affairs. All right. Any other questions? I'm going to go into how we traditionally start closing up the meeting. Today's been a shorter meeting, and that's okay. I wasn't there to ask questions, to write questions of the speaker there. But I'm going to ask myself this. Do you have any final words of wisdom, Justin, to share with us? I think my final words of wisdom today are patience. Have patience with your loved ones who may not be on the path you're on, but as long as they aren't harming you, like really harming you, have patience with them. Set boundaries. My wife is very big on boundaries. Set boundaries so that you can protect yourself and separate yourself when things come up from harm. But have patience with your loved ones. Practice the principles, not with a hammer. You're not there to beat them on the head with a hammer. Practice the principles with love and with patience. And that's my final words of wisdom. So come back next Friday. We will hear from next week's speaker, and they have confirmed. So let me just get the name. I'm a little bit less prepared this week because I was spending the time that I typically take to prepare to speak. Shanna C. will be our speaker next week. I'm excited to hear from Shanna next week. Stay updated via WhatsApp or our email list. If you're not subscribed, consider doing so at rico12pod@gmail.com. And I'm going to wrap up with what I call the prayer of consecration. Hang on just a second. I'm going to grab it. This is the prayer of consecration, or the covenant prayer, that was written by John Wesley back in 1755. And I'm going to pray it now. I am no longer my own, but yours. Put me to what you will. Rank me with whom you will. Put me to doing. Put me to suffering. Let me be employed for you or laid aside for you, exalted for you or brought low for you. Let me be full. Let me be empty. Let me have all things. Let me have nothing. I freely and wholeheartedly yield all things to your pleasure and disposal. And now, glorious and blessed God, you are mine, and I am yours. So be it. The covenant now made on earth, let it be ratified in heaven. Amen. All right, everybody. Remember, there is one who has all power. That one is God. May you find God now. Keep coming back, and when you do, come all the way in, sit all the way down. Let's trudge this road of happy destiny together. Work it. You are worth it.
It ain't about the body, it ain't about the skin. It's the lie that whisper you'll be whole if you give in. It's the high before the hollow, the click before the fall. It's the ache that never satisfies no matter what you saw. They told me it was natural, just boys being boys, but I was choking down poison dressed up like a choice. And now I'm calling it by name, no more hiding in the fog. It ain't just porn I'm fighting, it's the God I made of want. Point of problem, lust is the thief, selling us heaven and leaving us grief. I wanted to love, but I learned how to crave. Now I'm digging through ashes and calling it brave. She ain't an object and I ain't a king. Porn is the problem, not just a thing. And what about her? Yeah, the other side. The girl who learned early she was worth what she supplied. She didn't want to be seen, she wanted to be wanted. Now she's starved for attention and Instagram haunted. It's the hunger to be lusted, mistaken for love. And both sides end up empty, beneath and above. Two mirrors cracked, reflecting shame, chasing validation instead of names. Porn is the problem, it sells a fake cure, turns humans to products, makes touch feel impure. We thought we were free, but we're slaves in disguise, scrolling through bodies with dead in our eyes. This ain't just a screen, it's a spiritual war. Porn is the problem, and we can't ignore. I want more than a cinnamon behind a glassy screen. I want covenant, not dopamine. She ain't here for my escape. She's the temple, not the bait. Porn is the problem, but truth is the light. I'm learning to see her with heaven in sight. I'm laying down idols, I'm turning from shame. And love don't come cheap, it comes with a name. I ain't cured, but I'm done with the game. Porn is the problem, and I'm not the same. I used to worship lust. Now I'm learning how to love.